and you look to see that,
I mean, what's one more part? So, following the last video where they were fighting ARB coupler issues, they had a chance to think about things and reevaluate things, and they've decided that they are going to take one final look before moving on with the process. Here's that final look. Oh yeah. That ain't supposed to be like that.
Well, and the thing is, I think that's the cold seal problem. Because it's not elastic when it's cold.
oh, okay, so it's, okay,
So
well,
you stretch and see it doesn't just immediately return.
yeah, okay. But, oh boy.
I'm here.
Seal's been damaged.
Yep.
You can see it. It's torn. Right there.
Yep. On the bottom of it.
Yep.
That won't hurt me to let that show up. But,
And maybe order some of the round O-rings.
yeah. How will we go check toolbox at lunch?
Yeah, we could.
So the problem we've been trying to solve is that it's very, very tight to get the air coupler to slide over the end of the differential with the O-rings in place. And it catches on the O-rings, does not want to go, and then we do kind of manage to force it through. It's pulling the O-rings out of the slots, tears the O-rings, destroys everything. What we're finding with a little experimentation is, suspect this is actually temperature related. I mean, it's been borderline freezing here in the shop as we've been doing everything. The O-rings at that temperature are not elastic, and the metal all sort of shrinks. And so the coupler is smaller, the diameter of the shaft or the shoulder that you're trying to slide the coupler across is smaller. So we're ending up with more of a profile for the O-rings to try to slide it past, as well as things being smaller and not wanting to slide. We did some heating and warmed the coupler up, and we're able to get it to slide past. But I think with the inelasticity of the O-rings and everything else, we caught the O-ring, it's torn. So now we need new O-rings again before we can go any further.
I think when we get the new O-rings, we take the differential in the house, let it get up to room temperature.
Set it, let
Let it warm up a little bit.
and install it at room temperature.
And then put the coupler in the oven, bring it up to 100 and whatever, 120 degrees, so that it expands a little bit. And I think between the two, we'll have the warmer O-rings that are a little more pliable, and a coupler that expands a little bit.
So on that happy thought,
Okay.
much to my wife's dismay, let's take the
Differential in the house.
differential in the house
Okay.
and let it begin to acclimate.
So let's find a piece of cardboard or something to set it on, so that we're not getting an oily differential all over the kitchen or wherever we end up.
If only I had some cardboard around here.
Yeah, do you have any spare?
Yes.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, let's take that inside so we can acclimate.
I mean, what's one more part? Well, another day in the shop. They're still working on the differential and the ARB seals. I didn't get out here quite in time to film some of it, but here's Kenneth explaining what problem we're dealing with this morning.
Okay,
Hi.
onward. We've still got the rest of the differential setup to do, as all of the kingpins set up,
Yeah.
and everything else that's necessary to put this axle together.
So we got stuff to do.
And we've concluded that now that I think I'm up to 6 out of 9 internet experts agree the pattern
Is close enough.
is close enough.
it again for hopefully the final time?
Oh no. No, no.
No, we're about to start
Pinion
setting
preload.
the preload on the bearings, which will be a tighten it, test it, tighten it, take it apart, put it back together, probably several times.
Next step in this process, though, is we need to put because we've got our setup race here for the pinion depth. Make sure nothing there. Make sure our shims are staying here. We need to drive in the final race. So, driver, it is just a hair smaller than the bearing.
Bearing or race?
Race. And yeah, apparently 85 millimeters. I'm guessing 90 millimeters was too big.
Yeah, just a hair.
You can kind of hear it in the sound when it's straight versus when it's cockeyed.
Yeah, hold that. But you give it another love tap, just to double check. And you get in there and you feel, and there's no gap. Hold these. Oh, I'll set them down. Yeah, and so you look in, and you look to see that that the race is fully seated. Cleaning.
So, Kenneth, you said we were stopping working on the pinion
So, next
to
item,
do something else.
because
Yeah.
we're doing things that are starting to look like final assembly. We don't want to be introducing metal shavings and dirt into our final assembly. We still need to drill and tap for the
Air fit.
air fitting. And on this axle, with this locker, the air fitting is going to end up over on this side, kind of in the same vicinity as our vent.
There. I'm going to say right here.
So it's time to drillio a holio?
Yep.
Coolio.
Okay.
So what is the diameter of our fitting?
And more importantly, the whatchamacallit, the size of the hex head on the top.
Roy, do you need more protein for breakfast?
And so what we're doing here is I've actually got the fitting that's going to go in. I've got the hex head placed so that there's enough clearance for it to spin, and we're trying to mark, and it didn't really do it. Yeah, so
Can you dip like the tiniest bit of like the yellow compound?
marking compound on the
Yeah.
tip. That might work. Yeah, little paint mark.
So I suggested the tiniest bit of marking compound. Is it gonna work?
See if it'll
Leave some of it behind.
leave a... Okay. Take it out. Bingo.
Look at that.
How about that? We got a
Once in a
mark.
while I have a good idea.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were saying.
Nope.
So, yep, we're almost through. And one of the things you'll notice is Kenneth is kind of going slow on the drill speed. That actually can speed up how fast it cuts through. If the drill bit is spinning a little too fast.
A little faster there at the end. Because
Yeah.
as it comes out, it grabs. It helps it break the chip.
Yeah, at the very end. But yeah, generally as you're cutting through the steel before you get to the end, a nice slow speed will let the drill bit work better.
This is I think that's a 5/16. This is a 3/8, which is still a 16th under our final hole size. Final size at 7/16. I won on keeping it mostly straight.
Yeah.
we want to deburr it after we've threaded.
Yes.
Chamfer bit, we're going to go ahead and run this just to deburr the edge. And we're going to try to do the same on the inside for the same reason.
Right.
Yeah, that removes the burrs.
So just a standard 1/4 inch NPT pipe thread tap, which doesn't come in the normal set of taps. We had to order that one specifically. As it goes in,
It'll make contact, but and once you start, you're committed.
Yep.
The threads are going to go, and this does not need to be threaded all the way through.
Well, it should get the tip of the tap should
Protrude.
just protrude.
And we are starting to protrude
Okay.
at the same time that I'm running out of depth. So
Okay. Yeah. So we finished tapping, and again, since this is just final assembly, make sure you keep everything clean. We're putting in the bulkhead fitting. Uses a 9/16 ratchet, and make sure you get thread sealant on it. You don't want oil seeping out around the edge. But yeah. So there you go.
So with the drilling and metal shards and things that are going to create contaminants done, we're back to setting up our pinion preload. This is a case of we put the pinion in, we will start with the factory shims, evaluate what we've got for preload, and adjust from there. And it's a lather, rinse, repeat, 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 until we get our preload where we want it to be.
Look, I know some of this stuff is tedious, but our goal is to show you a real-life example of what it takes to set up an axle like this. What are you in for if you're going to do this yourself? You've seen Roy do this in other videos where he's setting up his workspace. We're going to make sure that we do some judicious cutting while preserving what you need to see.
We don't want any false readings coming from a dry bearing or anything of that nature, so we are going to go ahead and lubricate just some gear oil, the bearings that we're using for all of our setup work. Pinion install. Our first go, we need to set our initial pinion depth. Or pinion preload, because we've already figured out our pinion depth. There's a basic theory here as we look at our new pinion and our old pinion, because the pinion shims are going to sit, the preload shims will sit on this shoulder. And the argument is the pinion head is basically the same depth. And we kind of see that with our slingers here that are in the same place. And so if our distance between this bearing and the bearing that's going to ride here is the same, to have the same preload, we should have about the same amount of shim. But we know that we've actually reduced the shims that ride between this bearing race and the housing a little bit, and we know that this bearing is going to ride in the same place. So our theory is we're going to adjust our shim pack by about the same depth as that difference in preload, because we see again the shoulder here and the shoulder here are basically all the same.
And so we took the preload shims off here, and I measured and I got 62 thousandths. And then for the pinion depth, we went from 43 thousandths to 37 thousandths, which is 6 thousandths difference. And so I took the 62 thousandths, I subtracted 6, gave me 56 thousandths. And so I've got 3 shims that all together make up 56 thousandths. 3. And put it on, And that's our initial test. Shim pack installed. Shove it through. Now we're still using the setup bearing because we expect to take this apart
And put it together.
and put it together a couple of times as we
And it is
fine tune.
And it is a press fit as we go here. Really do want the washer in this because it affects your torque reading. Spec torque on this is 250 foot-pounds.
Okay. And you do want to spin it as you tighten.
Yep.
Because the bearings can be just a little slightly off and you can get a false torque reading. So you spin it to make sure they seat themselves properly. Is that already feeling tight?
That is feeling, to me, that's feeling tight.
Okay.
I doubt we're anywhere near spec.
Okay. Well, let's
for
check it here.
Torque, but yeah.
Handy cheat sheet. Gain of 60. Pinion bearing preload. For new bearings, 17 to 30 inch-pounds.
So we should
And
be
that's-
in that range.
Several different ones like this. This tells us, get it zeroed in. Okay, I'm going to get that moving. And I can already tell we're way over. Yeah, 64. So we're way over.
And still not at torque.
And
so.
not even at torque, so. Okay.
All shims accounted for.
We need to get the two bearings a little bit further apart so they're not squished into the races nearly as much. Given that we were substantially over preload and we hadn't even fully torqued down, I want to go several thousands. Now we have in our shim pack assortment, we can make 1,000th adjustments, but I want to step it up several.
Like 3, 5.
Something in that neighborhood.
Let's go 5. Let's go get to a point where we're too loose.
Okay.
Let's try to overshoot.
I always record what I'm doing. So we're going from 56 to 61. I'll try it again. So let's take an initial reading just to see how close we are. And sometimes it takes a little bit extra effort to get started, but you want the, what does it take to continue reading, which is 35 and a half.
17 to 30. So if we're already at 35,
Yeah. We're still not loose enough.
still need a little bit.
Put some of those lock nuts on there. I have 2 shims. Yes, pay attention because oil makes them stick.
So I'm thinking let's make a 2 adjustment.
2 adjustment. Okay.
I do tend to prefer to be towards the tight end of the spec because we know that as the gears break in and wear in, they're going to loosen up. They generally don't get tighter as you run them. So if we start more towards the tight end spec, they're more likely to wear into someplace in the middle. If you're at the low end, they're more prone to wearing out of spec.
All right, so we're going
2.
2,000ths. And just because I'm paranoid, and the tool is right here.
I was just trying to imagine what a life of a paranoid klutz would be like.
Wait a minute, who are you calling a klutz? What do you mean by that?
I was going to say, I'm not understanding why you would need to envision. That's kind of a daily occurrence, isn't it?
Okay, so we're going from 61 thousandths to 63 thousandths. Now, one thing to consider as we're doing this is that our setup bearing is a used bearing.
And so,
And so what we want is slightly looser.
We
So
want to be kind of in the middle of the range.
No, we want to be at the bottom of the new bearing range, so that when we put the new bearing in, it'll tighten up just a little bit.
Right.
And so that's our target, is right there at the bottom of
16, 18.
the 16, 18 range. Okay. 16.
Really? Okay. Well, then we need to go to,
Without full torque.
so we need to go to torque.
Yeah.
Over here. We have our nice holdback for our yoke. However, when you zoom in on this, you can see from our work with the Dana 80, we've wallowed out the adapter hole for the 1/2-inch drive attachment. And in fact, the last couple of times we've tried to use it for anything, we're finding that is slipping and rotating. So while I would prefer to have our nice holdback, we're going to resort to the old trustworthy pipe wrench. However, I'm leaving this plate in place because it helps retain the pipe wrench and keep it from moving in directions it ought not to go.
It's so much easier when you got a nice long cheater bar. Okay. $20.
I'm going to say that's a winner.
Chicken dinner.
Lubing the real pinion bearing. What we hope will be the final time that we do this. We do want to do our final checks with our real parts.
Yep. And we expect
This to be a little bit tighter.
slightly tighter. And let me stick it in the hole.
Please.
That's the way I like it.
It's a good thing I don't have to check made for kids.
What?
Channel's
I
PG-13.
I just like it when the bearing goes on.
That is true.
This is the fun of the real bearing, is that it really doesn't want to go on, and so
It's got a
I gotta
little bit of
hold
a
it.
press fit, so you got it?
I got it. Just don't hit it real hard.
Okay.
Is that enough to get a thread on?
Enough to get a thread on the nut.
Okay.
You can see we're still a long way from where we need to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we've reached the limit of this tool.
Yeah, and the tool has to work harder because it's pressing the bearing and the yoke at the same time. Whereas that setup bearing just slides right on, so it doesn't have to push. So be careful with that one.
Yeah, this one has the potential to be more than we want, but we've got our setup in here, so we shouldn't be too far off. But yeah, we don't want to just hammer on this if we can avoid it.
Yeah.
I think we're to the point where we want to switch to the torque wrench. Okay. Yep. Then it's going to take all three of us. Okay.
250 foot-pounds. That's real loose. Nine.
So with the real bearing, we lost a bunch.
We should have gained a bunch.
Possibly that new bearing is just slightly thicker in the machining. What that tells us, one, is we have to do this with the real bearing from here out, and two, we have to take it apart and remove. We need to go thinner.
And the question is, how big a step do we want to make? 1 or 2 thousandths? I don't want to do any more than that.
I'm going to suggest 1. We're at 9.
which is just under spec.
which is just under spec.
Okay.
And we take it apart, and we know this will take a little bit of effort to get the pinion back out.
We want less shim.
A hair less shim.
Hair less shim. Okay. And is the bearing still in there?
The bearing is still there.
I'm helping. Yeah.
That just tightened up a lot.
Yeah.
Let's do a check before we go any further.
Yeah. We're up at about 30.
It was only an adjustment of 1.
You also have not torqued down yet.
Well, and that's what's in my mind, is it's going to come up way under is no good. Way over is no good.
Maybe there's a flaw in my measurement of that. But I swapped out one of the 3 shims. And I triple checked both shims and they're only off by 1/1000th each. Maybe we got a false positive on the torquing on the when we torqued it with the last shim set.
You don't think it was down all the way?
It may not have been all the way tight. Did we spin it after we tightened it down?
We did.
So maybe we made a mistake.
The thing is, we got a reading of 9, which is way low.
But we didn't spin it after seating it necessarily. So we may have gotten a false torque reading on the nut.
And then we spun it, and then it loosened up, and we should have tightened again.
Yes. Because we're right at top of spec right now with a loose nut.
With a nut that we don't think is, well, the question is, at this point, if it's actually bottomed out, the additional torque isn't going to move it much. Right. I'm thinking let's go ahead and torque it and see how much more we get.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That did not tighten up very much.
No.
So I think we were really close anyway.
Right, which is why I'm thinking this might actually be,
Yeah.
we might be there.
And there's the adapters behind. Give it a full complete spin.
Both directions.
$33, but that also, this was grabbing a little bit. Like, it doesn't have enough oil on the thing.
So I think
I want to call that good.
we're going to call it good. I agree. We're going to call it good. So we spin this off, we put on a seal, we put the real yoke on, and
Yep.
torque it for real.
Yep. So we've got all of our final pieces that we're going to use. Kenneth is getting the yoke. We have a new seal. We have a new thrust washer that goes between the yoke and the bearing. And then we've got the brand new washer and pinion nut. And just as an important note, if you change gears a lot of times, save your old pinion nuts, because we did have to remove this pinion with the final bearing. And so we had to beat on it with a hammer. And
That's why you don't beat on shit with a hammer.
we did this, and we sacrificed an old used nut to save the threads on the pinion. So one of the things that happens when you put a nut on and off and on and off and on and off is you get a little bit of metal shavings from the nut. And so, again, clean, clean, clean. The seal comes with this. It's probably some kind of a rubberized sealing surface, but I like getting just a dab of RTV, and that just makes double sure that the seal actually seals. Now, important tip, the thrust washer that goes between the bearing and the yoke doesn't fit through the seal hole, so you put it in first. I've already got it put in. You didn't see me do it. And use number 6347 of ball joint tools.
In this case,
Makes a nice driver.
Less than absolutely ideal, but still better because you can reach around the pinion and try to seat this thing straight as opposed to trying to bang around the side.
Yep.
And then it's seated.
Just to clean it up. Yeah. The RTV squeezed out, and you know that it's going to provide a nice, good, tight seal. And then just another thing to help prevent oil leaks, you just smear, and I'm just going to put a big glop in there, and then I've already got RTV on my fingers, and squish it inside the splines
Of the yoke?
of the yoke. You can do it around the pinion. Either way, you just want just a little bit of RTV sealing any gap that might be there
Between the splines of the pinion and the splines of the yoke, but you do not want it to end up on the seal.
Okay, paper towel here.
And Kenneth, you said this was a 1410?
Wipe off.
Yes, this is a 1410 yoke, which is a little bit bigger than what is typical for a Dana 60.
Okay, well, there's another one.
So this is probably
That might be a 1310
the
yoke.
factory yoke. Yeah, likely a 1310. Just see how much bigger this 1410 is. Where I'm going to be using this with a heavy diesel application with a lot of gear reduction
And big tires.
and big tires.
You want a little bit of oil on the surface. It just lubricates it, keeps it from damaging the seal as you're sliding it in.
I swear a minute ago this was going
Well,
on.
you're kind of, yeah, there you go.
And what's interesting is this yoke slid on a whole lot easier
Yeah.
than the other one has.
Okay, new washer. New nut. Actually, this is a locking nut, but you know, belt and suspenders. Loctite. Okay, so you'll need to hold on to that yoke
Yep.
while I turn. Okay, it just got tight.
Oh, all of a sudden you're there. Okay.
All of a sudden we're there. Okay, now it's time to reset and do final torque. And we're close. Do we want to
Yeah,
double check?
let's do a double check.
Okay, you get it.
Cut. And that's lunch.
Lunch.
Yay, lunch!